So we all know that Hogan versus Andre was the main event, but you know what the real event was? Steamboat versus Savage. What a match that was. And 93,173 people got to witness it in the Pontiac Silverdome, along with many other matches. I'm John Retton with the retro review of WrestleMania 3. This was a big deal. It was Vince McMahon taking the vision from WrestleMania 1 and WrestleMania 2, though we don't really want to talk about WrestleMania 2 because it was a pretty big disaster, even though it was a box office success. As far as, match quality, it wasn't very good. And this one, really, outside of Steamboat and Savage and Andre being slammed by Hogan, there wasn't a lot in terms of match quality, but it was a spectacle of seeing 93,173 people in the Pontiac Silverdome. I'm doing quotations because I tend to believe it's 75 to 80,000, but still, Vince McMahon, having this big, grandiose vision of sports entertainment being brought to the masses, and it was a runaway success. It was tremendous. One of my favorite WrestleManias of all time, and really just the crowd was electric. So many other great moments. There were other matches where you're like, okay, they were just get in, get out. The entrances were longer than the goddamn matches, but still, pretty big deal. This felt like the first big supercard in WWE history, at least as far as Vince McMahon doing it. Yes, you had your first WrestleMania. They had the Rock and Wrestling Connection, Celebrity, Sports Entertainment, Human Centipede together, and WrestleMania 2, as I said, in 3 different locations, but this felt huge. And WrestleMania would just take off from there. It would just get bigger and bigger and bigger, even with some dips. This really kicked things off as this being the show of shows. So we have Vincent Howard Finkel in the opening shot, which is kind of cool because Howard Finkel was the first employee that Vince McMahon hired and the greatest ring announcer of all time. The crowd was electric. Aretha Franklin singing America the Beautiful. Monsoon and Ventura with Mary Hart and Bob Uecker, baseball great. He was the guy that was interviewing Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 4. WrestleMania is over. You want to get your foot off my chest? It's over. Doing that. That was really, really cool. Man, Andre, I'm going to talk about him here a little bit later. We had the Can-Am Connection, Rick Martel and Tom Zink. By their mullet powers combined, they defeated Don Morocco and Bob Orton Jr. with Mr. Fuji. Managers all over the goddamn place here. Bobby Heenan, Slick, and Jimmy Hart, especially Bobby Heenan. He was out there so many goddamn times because he had the Heenan family. This was fine, and the crossbody by Martel pinned Morocco 1, 2, 3, which is good because Tom Zink got a pretty good pop, which is one of the only times that Tom Zink really got a big pop from any crowd of this size. Because by the time he was out of wrestling, there weren't crowds of this size. But Rick Martel, it was cool to see him get the victory. And then we had Billy Jack Haynes versus Hercules with Heenan, and, well, I will say this, it was kind of cool how they had the cart running people to the ring because it was a big goddamn stadium. And Hercules working on the back of Billy Jack, more like Billy Back Haynes. I worked hard on that one. Sounds like a weird kind of back brace or something like that. There was big roid energy going on in this match, and I'm not saying it was the only match, but good God. Hercules even referenced doing steroids in the Mid-South promo. 10 Diana Ball a day, I believe was the quote. This is okay at first. It got a little messy because it was a battle of the full Nelsons. And they did some power moves and stuff like that. And at one point they tumble outside. Billy Jack gets the full Nelson on, but it's a double count out. And then Hercules is mad, busts Billy Jack open with the chain that he has. That's it. That's pretty much it for the match right there. We then get Hillbilly Jim, Haiti Kid, and Little Beaver versus King Kong Bundy, Little Tokyo, and Lord Littlebrook. They had 4 midgets in this match because they were a little short-staffed on the roster. I'm proud of that one, and I'm pretty certain that everybody is disliking it just because of that bad pun. Oh, well. Bob Uecker was on commentary. Well, the match is most notable for the midgets not pulling Little Beaver out of the way. And unfortunately, he got leveled. He got leveled by King Kong Bundy, who is a tremendous worker and very safe, but still a big guy. He hit an elbow drop. And apparently didn't work all that well. Did not end up working out so well for the little guy. He had injuries and I believe had to retire. That's a damn shame. It really is a shame. But this was, and Bundy didn't mean to do it. These things happen. It's just, it was only 3.5 minutes. It was just a comedy match to be there on the card. Though Hillbilly Jim was really over. I mean, Hillbilly Jim, legend has it his Hall of Fame speech is still going on to this day in some circles. So, Savage then yells at Mary Hart for interviewing Miss Elizabeth, my first crush in wrestling. Liz, that is, because how could a girl not love Miss Elizabeth? So, Fabulous Moolah is there to basically present the crown to Harley Race. And Bobby Heenan wants Harley Race beats JYD in the loser must bow match. And Moolah wants to see JYD bow to a white man with the last name of Race. And by the way, fuck the fabulous Moolah. I'm glad she's dead. I hope she's buried in hell for all the bullshit she did, because she fucking deserved it. For ruining a lot of the momentum that women's wrestling could have had in WWE. Killing off a Mania 5 payoff for the Jumping Bomb Angels. Mania 4, Mania 5. The Jumping Bomb Angels and the Glamour Girls. Really, really goddamn shit. Anyway, we have JYD versus Harley Race. Loser must bow match. They had JYD lose, so he would be a black man bowing to a white guy with the last name of Race in Detroit. That's not knocking Harley, by the way. It's just the symbolism is not lost on me, because Vince McMahon didn't even hide it back then. So yeah, JYD loses after a belly-to-belly suplex after he got distracted by Bobby Heenan, and then he does a curtsy and then hits Race with a chair. And holds the cape and crown, all that stuff. And I think it was the last big moment that Harley Race, well, one of the last moments that Harley Race had really in WWE. He would wrestle a little bit longer, but then would go into semi-retirement and then full retirement because he beat his body up for so goddamn long. But JYD really didn't do much after this, because unfortunately JYD was on drugs, and you know what kind of drugs. It was very obvious. He just wasn't there. He was still over as far as physical charisma, but man, really, really sad. You take a look at JYD in 1982, 1983 Mid-South, and it's a shame. He seemed to have gotten clean after that, but it's a real shame. And it's a shame he didn't get to be around for his Hall of Fame induction. Cool that his daughter got to accept it for him, though. Anyway, we get the Dream Team, which was Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake, with Johnny Valiant and Dino Bravo. This is when Dino Bravo had just come into the company, I believe, and they took on the Fabulous Rougeaus. Heenan runs in on commentary. I'm 2 for 2, Monsoon. And he says, actually, you're 1 for 3. Well, I wasn't out there for one of those matches. And he's like, I don't deal with midgets. I hate midgets. I don't know why that line popped me Bobby Heenan, so of course it did. And Beefcake accidentally hits Valentine. The ref gets distracted. Bravo hits Raymond, and Valentine covers 1, 2, 3. Now, the funny note is, Beefcake accidentally hit Valentine. He didn't mean to. Well, they're upset, and the heels leave. And Beefcake's like, what the hell's going on? Why are you guys leaving me? I didn't mean to do that. And footage of Piper wrecking the flower shop, and then Adonis attacking Piper to lead to this, match between Piper and Adonis, hair versus hair match, a retirement match, because Roddy Piper was never going to step in a wrestling ring again. About that, he kept coming back. Not that he's the only wrestler to go back on his retirement, but still, that was something else. So, chance of Roddy, that was really cool, and man, Hart got in, he got tossed around quite a bit, because Jimmy Hart was always willing to do that. Funny how you look at Jimmy Hart back then, you look at him now, and he's basically the same, and I think he's almost 80. I mean, that shows remarkable, like, aging or, medical science, whatever. I love Jimmy Hart, and I'm glad Jimmy Hart got inducted in the Hall of Fame, because he deserved it. We get a sleeper hold, and the heels think they won. They got the shears up, but no, Piper did not drop his hand down 3 times. And then Beefcake wakes Piper up, and then he has an instant face turn. It's funny that Beefcake was a heel in the previous match and then becomes a face here. And then Piper wins, and then they shave Adonis's head. Mirror, mirror, and everything. And man, Adrian Adonis was a wreck shortly after this match, I understand. So anyway, we get the last time that Piper will ever be in the ring. Again, about that. I'm not saying that, they were necessarily wrong to say this, but I think we all knew Piper would come back. Maybe he realistically believed that Hollywood would work out and he wouldn't have to keep wrestling. Given some of his matches after 96, it might have been better, actually, if he had stayed retired. But anyway, Jesse Ventura's in the ring just, to basically exist and stroke his own ego and stuff like that. And then we get the Hart Foundation and the wrestling referee, Dangerous Danny Davis, who actually did wrestle, I believe, in the Memphis territory. Before this, took on the British Bulldogs and Tito Santana, or as Ventura would say, Chico Santana, with Matilda. Matilda gets carried away by Ventura a little bit later, so you had a dog, being carried by Jesse Ventura, or Jesse Ventura carrying, Matilda that was a better actor than he ever was. That's a little mean. So, it was actually kind of cool, though, how Matilda did chase after Jimmy, and Jimmy did sell all that. Danny Davis was a ref. He had screwed the Bulldogs out of the Tag Team Championships, and so they won a revenge. And Danny Davis was like the bumping wrestling referee. And Dynamite Kid had the bad back at this point. Oh, such a shame that abuser had karma bite him in the ass and his career had to end. If you don't know, Google the stuff about Dynamite Kid. He wasn't a very nice guy. He was a great wrestler, but he wasn't a very nice guy. So, Tombstone to Danny by Davey Boy Smith, who was a natural even then, and Megaphone to Davey's head, and Danny Davis covers 1, 2, 3. And that was pretty much it right there. Really, that's all you gotta say. Heenan and Andre. Hogan has never faced a man bigger than him. He's been undefeated for 15 years. Man, they tried to do that, and I don't think anybody believed it. I mean, even though Andre was bigger than life, literally by that point, he was bigger than life. Great stuff, though. Heenan really selling this whole thing between Andre and Hogan, and then Butch Reed with Slick versus Coco Beware. It's Hogan's favorite match on the card. If you know, you know. This is a big deal. Two black guys in a big, stadium like this. Yes, you had JYD and other wrestlers in the Superdome in Mid-South, which was a big deal, and in other territories. But as far as the scope of this was a big deal. It's just sad it took till 1987 to get to it. Ventura says buckwheat a lot. Because why not? And then we get a roll-up with tights 1, 2, 3. Slick then, gets Coco Beware with his cane from behind. And then Tito Santana runs in. And Ventura, what is Chico doing here? Good Lord. That's why, unfortunately, every time I hear when Brian Cage on AEW gets introduced, I hear from Chico, California. I hear from Chico Santana, California. Because, of course, I do. Savage talks about, history beckons the Macho Man. And Steamboat saying, we have reached our moment. And there's nothing I can say about Steamboat and Savage that hasn't already been said. If you have not seen this match, please watch this match. It's one of the best WrestleMania matches ever. 1 or 2, depending on your perspective. And I would argue number 2, I think Taker versus Shawn at 25 just eclipses it. But if people say this, I'm not going to disagree. And yes, you can go into the backstory where Steamboat was driven nuts by Savage, pre-planning all the stuff and everything, but still it was really goddamn good. George Animal Steel making his presence known, Miss Elizabeth being there, the huge, it's an absolute work of art, the huge pop when, Savage got rolled up by Steamboat 1, 2, 3. It was an absolute work of art. I need to rewatch this match. It's incredible. I mean, I just watched it a bit ago. It's goddamn great. Please watch this match. I love it. It's absolutely incredible. And Steamboat wins, and then, unfortunately, had to drop the Intercontinental Championship to Honky Tonk Man, not Butch Reed. And that was a real shame, because Butch Reed would have been a better Intercontinental Champion than Honky Tonk Man. Then again, I think a pile of shit that basically wasn't shaped like Honky Tonk Man would have been a better Intercontinental Champion than the Honky Tonk Man. I don't like the Honky Tonk Man. Speaking of which, here's Honky Tonk Man with Jimmy Hart versus Jake Roberts or Alice Cooper, that is. Anyway, Honky Tonk was shit. I never liked Honky Tonk Man. And there were people that liked him. That's fine. If you like him, cool. But he rolls Jake up like 7 minutes in and gets the ropes 1, 2, 3. Jake Roberts does not get the victory. And then Jimmy basically had distracted Jake. So Honky Tonk almost gets hit in the head with a guitar. And then Alice Cooper and Jake Roberts put the snake on Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart really oversells it. Maybe he was really afraid of snakes. I think he might have said that in an interview. But that was pretty cool. Just a shame Honky Tonk Man had to win and then become the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. The 80s weren't all that great. They were. Just, one moment ain't going to make the 80s all that bad. Now, Mean Gene is in the ring to announce the attendance of 93,173. Oh, yay. No, it really wasn't. I don't believe it for a second. Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov with Slick versus the Killer Bees. Okay, Hacksaw Jim Duggan interrupts the Russian national anthem and then is basically just around ringside and chases Nikolai Volkov, and then about 5.5 minutes in, sees the camel clutch on one of the Killer Bees and says, Sheik, no, boom. Slaps his wood all over Sheik's back. That causes a DQ because the referee does not want to see another man's wood all over another man's back. And there we go. So, then we get to Andre with Heenan versus Hogan. WWE Championship match. Big goddamn deal. Huge hype. Huge reaction. People were throwing trash at the ring. Actually, a fun fact about the other, the previous tag match. There was trash all over the ring. It was like the NWO would have made. No, it was like fans were fed up and maybe they're like, give us the main event. Oh, we're going to throw trash at Andre. Yes, there's the backstory of Andre having such a bad back. And to the point where he was probably, loaded up on alcohol and pain meds and stuff. Because his back hurt so goddamn bad because of his condition and the abuse his body had taken and all that. It was still really sad to see Andre like this. If you even see Andre 3 years prior, 2 years prior, he didn't move this bad. And he didn't move that great against Big John Studd. But still, he didn't move this bad in the WrestleMania 2 Battle Royal. That was a year before. He just couldn't do it anymore. He just couldn't. I mean, was no main event in WrestleMania history has felt as big as this. Now, I'm not saying that this match was well worked. It wasn't. It was dog shit as far as in-ring work. But it was the spectacle of seeing Hogan finally being able to slam the Giant. It was the monumental match that Vince McMahon needed to hang his hat on and be like, okay, this is the main event I can promote to end all main events, and I can do better. I can do better in-ring work after this, maybe. But this is a spectacle, and it was. It was a big spectacle. It was tremendous. Andre was so hurt at this point, though. He couldn't even do much of a high kick. He could do a kick instead of a kick to the face. Hogan would have to lean into it, and I knock Hogan a lot, and believe me, I'm going to continue to knock Hogan because Hogan, only apologized for getting caught on camera, not for what he said, because he hates the brother's brother, but he did his part here against Andre. And when he finally slammed him, huge pop, leg drop, 1, 2, 3, big deal, and that was it. They were off to the races right there, or as Hogan would put it, the master race, because no, I'm not going to forget that, but this was exactly what it needed to be. It was a huge deal, big monumental main event, and WrestleMania, was bigger than life at this point. It would have its dips, it would have its better work main events after this, but you would have a harder time arguing that any main event felt bigger than this. Like, really. Like, you would have a bit, it's hard to come into, or come up with anything that felt bigger than this. Savage versus Hogan in Mania 5, sure. Rock versus Cena at WrestleMania 28, sure. Hogan versus Warrior felt big. But as far as the build and what these two guys meant to wrestling, especially Andre, world traveled and all that, and Hogan, what he meant to wrestling, and how much, more he would mean to wrestling before kind of trying to kill the company in 1993 with WrestleMania 9, but I digress. He had exactly the look that Vince McMahon wanted to push. And it was a big goddamn deal. And it is one of the, it's one of the greatest moments in WrestleMania history. Steamboat versus Savage was still the better match, obviously, and Savage was always better than Hogan, but on this night, Hogan belonged where he belonged, and it was a big deal. Anyway, agree, disagree with what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.